Thank you so much for attending this meeting. My name is Carla Rivera and I work for the Community Engagement Office. We're happy to be able to offer a place to build community with our vertical teams. And we've gone ahead and anticipated some topics that we would like to discuss with as a panel style. But please feel free to go ahead and add any questions that you would like to address in the chat now, or you can address them during the sections. At the end of this panel discussion meeting, we will have a Q&A that we'll be able to open it up for everyone. Since everyone is here and we would like to know who was able to participate in the session, can you please go ahead and share your name and your school affiliation in the chat? Additionally, this meeting is being recorded and we will be able to upload this meeting and all of our meetings at a later date for everyone to view. Now, I would like to get started and introduce members of our leadership team, and I'm going to start with our superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. My name is Stephanie Elizalde, and I am certainly the proud superintendent of Austin ISD.
Thank you. Next up, we have our Chief Academic Officer.
Good evening, everyone. Elizabeth Casas, Chief Academic Officer. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Our Chief of Schools.
Good evening, everyone. Anthony Mays, glad to be here, glad to be a part of the conversation.
Our Equity Officer.
Good evening. Welcome to the conversation. Stephanie Hawley, Equity Officer.
Our Chief Technology Officer.
Good evening, everyone. Sean Brinkman, Chief Technology Officer. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Our Chief of Police.
Good evening, everyone, and buenas tardes. Ashley Gonzalez, Chief of Police. Excited to be here. Welcome.
Our Chief Human Capital Officer.
Good evening, Leslie Stevens, Chief Human Capital Officer. Glad you could join us.
Our Chief Officer of Intergovernmental Relations.
Hello, my name is Jacob Reach, and I'm excited to be here with our Bowie and Akins families today.
Our Executive Director of Innovation and Development.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Wallace. Thanks for making time to be here tonight.
And lastly, our Chief Operations Officer.
Hello, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity to have a great conversation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So right now we are closely approaching the end of the school year, and I'm sure that's in everyone's mind. So Dr. Mays, can you tell us a little bit about what the end of the year is going to look like?
Yes, ma'am. Happy to do so. And so the end of the year is about graduation and celebration time. And so we are looking forward to our seniors walking across the stage. This year will, of course, be a little different due to COVID-19. And so we will be hosting outdoor graduation ceremonies in our stadiums. And so those will take place between May 28th and June 3rd. And so we'll be utilizing a variety of safety measures to check temperatures and maintain social distancing. So again, we'll have to limit the capacity. And so each graduate will have at least 4 guests that they can bring to the graduation. We've also shared communication on our proms. And so our proms will look, again, a little different just to make sure everybody's safe. And so we'll have indoor, outdoor proms, food will be packaged. We'll also be encouraging our students to maintain social distancing outside of their date. And so students will be able to bring 1 guest to the prom. And so there's a lot of things that are in place, and we want to be able to maintain those ceremonial rites of passage for our seniors. So we're excited about the end of this school year.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mays. And so as we're seeing the light on the end of this pandemic, I'm sure folks are already thinking about next year and understanding what it takes to be prepared, you know, as we pivot. So what can we expect for our summer sessions and next school year? Dr. Elizalde, can you speak on that?
Yes, thank you so much, Carla. So one of the things we do know is that certainly for most of us, if we have a conversation, this seems like it has been the longest year ever because of COVID-19. And if that wasn't enough, then we had our wonderful Snowvid opportunity as well. So given that, it's something that we really want to recognize, that we want to provide some support during the summer for our students that will have this hurdle because they have the least amount of time to stay caught up. So for instance, there will be some activities for what I like to call the handoff grades. So when you're going from 5th to 6th grade, when you're moving from elementary to middle, and then there'll be some opportunities for handoff between middle and high school when you're going from 8th to 9th grade. There'll also be some summer support programs for our students who are at the high school level who may be having some challenges with their high school credits. What we definitely want to make sure of is, as you're getting closer to that high school graduation, you have less time to get caught up and to stay caught up. So we want to make sure we have opportunities because credits are so different at the high school level than it is at other grade levels, that we want to make sure we support our students. At the same time, and this will make Austin ISD different, or albeit Austin ISD weird, as the case may be, because we're not going to do what most other districts are going to do from the perspective of everybody. We're going to have offerings of summer school across the board. We know that it's also important to ensure that we have quality at the same time as quantity. So we want to be very strategic. We want to prioritize our needs so that we can offer the best interventions and support plans possible during the summer, and allow some of our folks who may need to take some time to really reset and get themselves ready for our next school year. We will be offering face-to-face, a more traditional face-to-face model the coming school year, all things being where they are now. A question I've been asked is, will we be requiring masks in the face-to-face? If the CDC says masks are still required, then we absolutely are going to have masks. We are going to use science for the basis of our decision making, but we've also learned a lot about face-to-face instruction and the fact that masks do make a difference, and especially given the fact that all of our staff members have had an opportunity to receive their vaccines. So we know that those most at risk have had opportunities to be able to get vaccinated. And it was so great, even yesterday, as I was stepping out of our building for just a moment, there was a line of our staff members waiting to get the one-shot Johnson & Johnson. We partnered with HEB and they were able to offer that to our staff members as well. So that is something we're excited about. In addition to that, our team is working to create some form of a virtual instructional model. Here's the key component for next year. No teacher will be asked to do both. We will not have teachers having to teach simultaneously both the students that are at home through Zoom and the students that are physically in place. That is really an unreasonable expectation. Our teachers and their support staff did an amazing job of continuing to make it and get through, but we know that we need to ensure that our teachers are able to focus on one part or one type of that instructional model. And we can do that design early on. It will take a commitment from our parents, because we will be asking our parents to please choose the commitment for at least one semester. Otherwise, our principals are going to have challenges in trying to meet the needs of ever changing, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's virtual. And I think lastly is the fact that these plans will be developed from our curriculum office and our schools office. So our campuses will be involved in the creation of these virtual styles of delivery. There will be some things I can't actually answer right now. The Texas Education Agency, or TEA, has not yet given us all of the guidelines, but we've learned enough about our virtual instruction that we know some students have benefited from that, and we want to make sure that that's still offered. But we also know there is no replacing the teacher's face-to-face instruction for 90% of our students. And so we want to encourage everyone to have an opportunity to experience that face-to-face instruction for the new school year. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Elizalde. I'm sure everyone is in anticipation to be back and ready in the classroom. So thank you so much for that. Now we want to give you guys the opportunity to ask questions. So please feel free to drop them in the chat. And we will definitely make sure to work through them. And we actually have a question. Hello, thank you for hosting this meeting. I appreciate all the hard work AISD has put into this year. My question is, how will high schools support and help this year's freshmen who've been completely remote transition to on-campus schooling next year?
So like Dr. Elizalde just shared, we're focused on those transition or handoff grades. And so our 8th graders, whether it's a bridge program that's focused on SEL, because we recognize the challenges that have been in place for our students over this summer, throughout this year, they've had those challenges. This summer, we'll be able to target some of those areas through some of those SEL-focused bridge programs. We are working with the academic team to try to custom create some of the programs that we have for summertime that are focused on project-based learning. You know, we want to leverage the opportunity to, again, have the students relax, reconnect with the campus, recognize where they've been, but also recognize where we need for them to be prepared to go as we open up the school year. And so that's kind of our focus. But again, we also recognize that there's a need for some students to play catch up. And so we'll be meeting those needs too. But again, we'll be taking a variety of efforts to try to meet those kids where they are and help them to transition into the upcoming school year.
And I think that there was an extension of that question, Dr. Mays, that I'm going to go ahead and jump in. This is normally when you take out your pen because you're like, oh, she's committing us to do something else. Yes, that would be correct. So one of the things that what I'm hearing is, of course, like I'm a freshman this year and I haven't been on campus. So for next school year, it's very likely as if it's almost my freshman year because I haven't been on campus, and the same at other grade levels. So I think your team is looking at still having some sort of a transition, even though there'll be sophomores that will include them so that they will have that opportunity to really re-norm as they arrive to their campuses. And I think high schools are some of the big areas that we're hearing about, but certainly even like 5th graders who are now in 6th grade right now that are going to go to 7th grade. And the last thing I would ask both Dr. Mays and I would ask you all, particularly the last 6 weeks, as things continue to improve, we are going to want to continue to try to encourage, particularly for those students who this was their first year at that grade level, at that campus, we want to encourage you to allow them to come face to face during this last 6 weeks. There are a couple of reasons why that's important. One is exactly the question, how do we help that transition if they've never been on campus? And two, our funding is tied to how many students actually report during the last 6 weeks of this school year. In order for us to keep the last 4th, 5th, and 6th weeks of hold harmless, we will need to have 43.6% district-wide of our students report face-to-face, or we will not receive all of the funding for this school year. And so that's something we just recognized that Texas Education brought to our attention. So I thought I'd just highlight that.
Yes, ma'am. And Dr. Elizalde, we didn't have to pull out the pen. We do have those programs in place for 9th through 11th graders. But again, we have to focus on those handoff grades, but we also have it for the other grades too. But again, we do not want it to be just a repeat of what they've just finished throughout that school year. So we do have that SEL focus, but and a process to try to make sure that they're enjoying that experience, because again, we recognize what students have been experiencing all year, and we don't want this summer to be a repeat of that.
We will be switching to interpreter number 2.
Thank you. And we're gonna read one more question, but as we're looking through some of the questions, I see some budget questions. We will have a session specifically for those questions. So please know that we will try to answer them in the upcoming section. But one of the questions before we move on is, will we see fine arts get the opportunity for in-person recitals this school year at both the middle school and high school level? And will there be a relaxing of mandating masks for outdoor physical activities? I'm concerned about warmer temperatures and being able to breathe while exercising.
So I'm not going to put our team on the spot on that one. I'm going to go ahead and take that one. The outdoor activities, let me take the easy one first. Let me take the softball question first. The outdoor activities, we are working with our health director, Alexandra Copeland, and I absolutely have been looking at what surrounding districts are starting to do in terms of relaxing some of the outdoor activities with some of the masking, and we will be leaning in that direction. I don't have the specifics yet. I want our whole team to weigh in on that. The issue with recitals and performances is that the data are still very clear that any of the behaviors that require, you know, certainly like the projection, even though I'm trying really hard to lower my Latina voice and my teacher voice, I know I can still hear my volume go up, and I promise you that's just that I get real super just animated. That's just, my mother always said that's why I got a C in conduct when I was in 2nd grade. But anyway, not that that influenced me in any way. That expression seems to really, there's a lot of data connecting that. As you all know, over the year, choirs and performances, when we have drum lines, for instance, I'm not concerned because drum lines don't utilize the same type, but any of the wind ensemble type instrumentation does tend to promote. And while students in general have not been overly affected by the virus, if it's my child or if it's one adult in our school, it is going to matter, right? Because they're all individual people. So that's my initial hesitancy on the recitaling of this year or any of those types. But I don't want to do a blanket, no, we're not going to. I really want us to work with Dr. Mays and Ms. Casas with regard to, and I believe next week we do have a meeting early on so that we can have conversations about what additional activities. So we got through graduations, we came to consensus, proms, we came to consensus. So I think there's some opportunity, and I really appreciate that question because it'll make us have to go back and rethink some of the decisions that we've made. I wanted to answer one more I saw quickly about where are we, how do we get to the 43.6%? We were all the way at 23.6%. As of Monday, we were right above 30%, which means if we continue that trend, I do think we can get there, but it is going to take, of course, everyone feeling comfortable enough so that you would allow your children to come to our classrooms. I think we're getting there. But we're going to need to continue to listen to see what other things we can do so that we can encourage our students, our parents to let your children come to face-to-face.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde. And so I'm seeing a lot of budget questions, so I kind of want to jump in ahead and go to that. We are facing some budgetary challenges, especially with COVID-19. So Ms. Stevens, can you really talk to us about how that's going to affect staffing plans and our campus funding for our upcoming school year?
Yes, thank you. I will start with, for the 2021 school year, we were projected to have 80,000 students. Currently enrolled, we have 75,000 students. So we have a gap of 5,000 students. What we have done is we've set our projection for next year at 77,351. So that is still a gap from what this year, how we staffed for, and next year. So we have about a 2,500 student gap, in terms of our staffing. So what we did was we looked at the staffing, and I'm going to call them formulas from last year that were used to staff our campuses for this school year. If we had done nothing and left the exact practice and formulas in place, we would have had a reduction of about 622 campus positions that we would have had to decrease. So in looking at that, we also knew that there was a strong focus in the district on equity. And so we looked at all of our ways that we use to staff campuses and tried to look at them through an equity lens, meaning our greatest resources And the biggest portion of our budget in the district goes to personnel. So we know that our greatest resource is our personnel, our teachers, our counselors, our assistant principals, our principals. And so we looked at how is it we determine how many personnel are provided at each campus by allocation out of the budget. And what we've done differently for the upcoming school year is we've applied what we call weights to our guidelines. So we looked at a typical school, and I'm going to give a very simple example. If a campus was projected to have 1,000 students, and what we did was we know that out of those 1,000 students, 100 of those students are economically disadvantaged. What we did was we took that 100 and we multiplied it times 1.2 and actually provided a projected number at 120 more than what they're, we took the 100 and added 20 more to their projection, so that we're talking about a bigger number that then we utilize to divide into to see how many allocations that campus receives. So we're trying to provide the most resources where we need the most resources for our students. And so while we did those staffing adjustments within our staffing guidelines, overall across the district, we've got approximately 200 to 250 positions that will no longer be on the campus. What we do is if that position currently has an employee in it, we put them in what we call a priority pool. And so what happens is we have a priority pool of employees, and as the year proceeds, things happen, and it happens every year. We have teachers who resign or retire or move out of the area. And so we have vacancies on campuses. So our people, our employees who are in that priority pool will go into those vacancies. We hire between 600 and 700 teachers every year. And so having 200 to 250 teachers in our priority pool, we guarantee every employee will have a position for next school year who is a current employee. So we do not have any teachers or counselors or assistant principals who are going to lose their job just because we've got population shifts. But one of the things to remember is the greatest reason for the reduction of need as staff on a campus level is because we do have a reduction in our student enrollment.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stevens. And Dr. Mays, in connection with that, can you tell us about how instruction drives the budget, both at the campus and district level? Dr. Mays, I think you're muted.
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. We go into a process where campus leaders and stakeholders are reviewing campus data. They're looking at areas of need. They're trying to look at that data, desegregate that data, and figure out what are going to be the priorities. They're having conversations with their teacher leaders, with their teachers, with their communities, as they look at those campus needs and try to make determinations as to, okay, what's going to be our priority and how are we going to focus on that with our manpower that we have available to us. And so those are ongoing conversations. The student data in the form of needs, in the form of student choice sheets also helps drive that process. So as students select courses, as students identify what it is that they're interested in, that's another data point that principals use to make those determinations. But, I just want to reiterate that, again, that's a community level process that takes place at the campus, and then that's driven by the principal and the leadership team to try to make that determination. As you move into the district level, you see that exact same process as we look across the district and we identify areas of need, as Ms. Stevens just talked about. Then we try to make sure that we have our resources aligned with those areas of need that we have.
And let me take some of the questions that I've seen as well, just because I think they're related to what the expectations are. And I do want this to be a time when we can get to some of these questions. So the goal here of why a teacher will no longer be asked to do this, I've got to do both simultaneous or concurrent teaching, is so that it will not be screen based if you're coming face to face. So the whole intent, I really appreciate that question, is that while there will certainly be technology integration because we're getting better at how to utilize technology in instruction, that will not be the primary instructional delivery model. Ms. Casas's team is working with our campuses, our instructional coaches. This is about more of a, I don't like to use the word traditional, because the traditional kind of form of education, we want it to be inclusive, we want it to be engaging, and we certainly want it to have some technology usage, but it does not, we do not want that to be relying upon technology, whereas right now many of our students in some instances may be coming in person and are still essentially getting some instruction technologically or virtually. So this is about teachers being able to do face-to-face instruction, not having technology as the main platform. Also with regard to how we can, what we've learned from using this, while a teacher will not be doing it concurrently, we could use this for a teacher to have one class period where he or she may be teaching, and I'll take something that may have lower class enrollments at some schools versus others. Like what if I'm in AP Calculus BC and there are only 4 students at a particular campus wanting that course. In the past, we may have said, well, there's only 4 students, we're not going to be able to teach that. With virtual instruction, this affords us an opportunity to ensure that we can have someone there to support the classroom of 4, but they would be able to pipe in or be able to receive some instruction via Zoom, but we'll have someone else to help those students and provide that for those students, rather than the teacher who's delivering that instruction feeling like he or she is having to do both. So what we definitely see is an opportunity for us to use what we've learned through some of the challenges in a way in which we can benefit our students by expanding course offerings. The transitions for each of these levels that we talked about a few minutes ago are going to be campus based. And so I would first encourage you to please talk with your campus leaders. And if you're not feeling the love there, or there's some need for some additional information, please reach out to your executive director. And if that doesn't work, then reach out to one of our associate superintendents. And if that doesn't work, then absolutely, please reach out to Dr. Mays or myself. I know you can locate our emails. We're here to problem solve this together, and we want to make sure. There are some parents who still have a lot of concerns for lots of different reasons about sending children in face-to-face. Please note, this is not a requirement at all, and I don't want anyone to feel pressured, but I did want to share the information because I certainly want people to know that it is still going to be a contingency part of how we will be able to be held harmless for the second semester. And so, and do keep in mind that some districts actually decided that they were not going to offer any virtual instruction at all. That has not been the case for us, and I'm not sorry that I'm glad we offered it, and we're going to continue to offer it, and that's why we're even committed to continuing to do so next year. There may be some funding implications, but by no means am I pressuring, but I definitely wanted people to know that if you are comfortable and you could do so, it will help us with regard to getting, I think 2 things. One, we do want to create some sense of returning to some normalcy so that we will be able to have students ready to come back in the fall, and it certainly will assist us with our budget shortfall being held harmless the second semester. I think I got to a few of them.
Yes, you did, Dr. Elizalde. Thank you so much.
I think, and we can skip that next question that we had that you were going to actually ask me whenever you get to that, whenever it's to me, so that we can save some more time for additional questions from our constituents, from our community.
Awesome. We actually did have another question, and kind of to following up about the virtual element. There is some concern that, especially at the high school level, certain students, classrooms are 15 minutes with the teacher, and then it's working on their own. And so they would like to know, how is that going to look like maybe in the next at the end of 6 weeks of this school year and next school year, and to continuation of that, like, will in-person learning defer? with the curriculum, is it going to be different in person versus the virtual option, or are they going to be the same?
Can you repeat that very first part of the question one more time?
So I got a question privately that there is some apprehension about sending their child back to school because at the high school level, they've experienced that their child has met with the teacher for 15 minutes, and then the rest of the time, the child is working on their own. And so they want to know, how is that going to look the same way next year, even the last 6 weeks of this school year?
No. Is the answer to that question.
Awesome.
No.
And Dr. Mays is giving, of course, the correct answer. No, there will be engagement. We will start to transition to more and more engagement. And honestly, in a supportive way, we need to know where we have areas that we need to provide support to our campuses where that type of instructional delivery is not occurring. My expectation right now is that our instruction for those students that are face-to-face is engaging with students and is not primarily on a technology platform. Now, we have different campuses working through that. However, Dr. Mays absolutely needs to know if there are some areas that we need to provide some additional support, because the face-to-face instruction should be more engaging just by virtue of the fact that you are in person. And the curriculum itself is the same. I'll defer to Ms. Casas if she wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, the standards are the same. Every grade and content has the basic same standards that we have to meet mastery on. But to Dr. Elizalde's point, we don't want children to come to school and then sit in front of a computer all day. We want to really engage and get into teaching. So we do expect our teachers to be doing that more this year and next year.
Yeah, there's ways to safely engage, and we've been focused on providing professional development on that. You know, how do you engage students during a time of a pandemic? And hopefully everybody's been benefiting from that support. But again, like Dr. Elizalde said, where we need to provide more support, we're definitely here to help because we do see campuses that are doing this successfully despite, you know, having to do it within a pandemic. So we're all about support, and we can help wherever you see those issues at.
Thank you.
And I would be changing to ASL interpreter number 1.
Thank you so much. And another question before we move on to our next section is, besides having true face-to-face instruction next fall, will we get a more detailed accounting of how next school year would look soon? I'm not comfortable filling out a survey about returning, and I'm not comfortable about committing to returning next fall until I understand how next school year will really look like.
Yeah, I'll start off with that. I think it will be best if we actually do a video of some of our students and with Dr. Mays and Ms. Casas illustrating what it should look like. This is the ideal of what the expectation should be. And I think we do have some campuses that are in fact doing that. And I'd love to be able to highlight those anyway, because there's no reason to reach outside of our community. We have we have excellent principals and some absolute excellent teachers that are all doing this, and we should highlight that so that we can lay that foundation. I do want to apologize for that survey that went out. That was an annual survey that kind of goes out each year, and being new, I did not know that that survey was going out, and I certainly got a lot of feedback. I got a lot of love on that was not an appropriate time to send it out. And I truly understood that, because then I'm like, well, why did we send this out? So that's on me. My apologies. It did not make sense. We did not provide any, this is what next year's going to look like. And so therefore, how can we be asking parents to tell us whether they're considering sending their children back to face-to-face with regard to that? And because it just popped up on the hold harmless, we have only been guaranteed the hold harmless for semester 1. So the legislation only lasted through the first, second, and third 6 weeks. In order for hold harmless to be held for the second semester, for semesters for 6 weeks, 4, 5, and 6, we have to meet that target. And that was, the state of Texas has done things differently than all of the other states.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde, and we really appreciate all the questions that are coming. So if you have more, please go ahead and put those in the chat. But I want to kind of talk a little bit briefly about equity. And Dr. Hawley, if you could go ahead and can you tell us about what the Equity Advisory Committee is all about?
Absolutely. Thank you so much and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here and share information. Our Equity Advisory Committee is our opportunity for our community to tell us and give us advice on what we need to do. And this particular committee makes recommendations directly to the superintendent. The Office of Equity is just a conduit and a facilitator and a convener. But Dr. Elizalde has embraced this idea that there's a lot of collective wisdom in our community. And so we have 4 co-chairs. We just met for the first time last week. We have 2 community members and we have 2 staff members. We have students, teachers, staff, all coming together to have conversations. And I'm going to shift to Dr. Elizalde because this is one of her favorite graphics, at least for this week. She calls it the Equity Blossom. And Dr. Elizalde, if you would talk a little bit about the power in the model that we've put together collectively for this committee.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. And yes, both Dr. Hawley and I have an affinity for our equity work. Certainly an area that I want to think I'm working towards getting more proficient in, but certainly we're fortunate to have Dr. Hawley leading this. I call it the equity flower petal blooming. It is an alignment. It's an alignment of our strategic framework that includes the mission, the vision, the values, and the priority focus areas. And so when you see student well-being and achievement, teacher, employee, and well-being, culture of respect and customer service, and of course, financial stewardship and prioritization. These are the 4 priority focus areas for our district that were developed by our school board of trustees. And therefore, to see that they are the part of this flower petal blooming, because that's what we're doing. We're blooming our way to ensuring that we have equity. And then we're going to engage with Dr. Hawley's team, again, working to identify and create the request for proposal of our equity assessment. And then the most important part, they're located at the top, is all of this must, if we're really doing equity work, equity is not done to communities, equity is done with communities. And so you can see the community building and the educational component of this really important flower petal blooming.
Absolutely. And so just to close out, you all are all invited to the next meeting. It's April 27th from 5:30 to 7:30. We welcome the community, students, everyone is welcome. We have roughly 20 members of the committee, but there's a lot of community-driven elements. And so we welcome caregivers, families, parents, and we hope to see you on the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move forward to kind of talk a little bit about a strategic plan framework. And I want to give Dr. Elizalde and Ms. Wallace to talk a little bit about this before we start our Q&A to really dive into the questions that we are getting. So we are looking at this strategic plan framework that was actually adopted before leadership came in this past summer. And we want to kind of find out what's the next process for administration to develop targeted strategies. So Ms. Wallace, can you talk a little bit about this?
Of course, thank you. Michelle Wallace, Office of Innovation and Development. And that's right, the Board of Trustees developed and approved the strategic plan framework and scorecard last year. The framework includes the mission, vision, values, and priority focus areas with equity as a foundation for all of the work. The priority focus areas are student well-being and achievement, really centered on student well-being and achievement, teacher and employee well-being, culture of respect, customer service, and fiscal stewardship and prioritization. We're right now working with Dr. Elizalde, our leadership team, to develop strategies and action steps to help advance the work in the district around those focus areas, using feedback from the community and additionally feedback that Dr. Holly's office, the equity office, has gathered throughout the last year to make sure equity really is the foundation for our strategies.
Thank you. And so, Dr. Elizalde, can you talk a little bit about the strategic framework and the plans?
I'll be very brief. This is just to ensure our community that we are not looking at these things in isolation. So our strategic framework then allowed us to build out what I'll call our district, our community, our Austin ISD community scorecard for the 2021-2022 school year. Now, these data that we'll be looking at and that we'll be evaluating whether we're getting where we need to get and building on the excellence and equity and success that already exist, is really about the supporting data pieces, which are really connected to so what? So what are we going to do in order to meet these outcomes, and how do we evaluate ourselves? We have to remember that at the end of the day, we exist to serve students. And so I did read one of the last observations by one of our community members, I'm presuming a parent, and I'm really saddened and recognize that we have to continue to support our campuses to have inviting and encouraging schools so that all of our children are welcomed. And I just personally want to apologize to those of you who have had your children in school face-to-face and they have not had a positive, they haven't had a positive experience. We will continue to support our campuses so that we work to ensure that we recognize that students are at the center of all of the work that we do. And so we are working on this district improvement plan that will specifically also align to Dr. Stephanie Holly's equity action plan that it's not her plan, it's the plan they put together. It's just something that they created. So as I started to say that, I'm like, people are going to think it's her plan. No. This was really a capturing of voices in this equity action plan. And so what we're doing is we're using that as our process or processes to inform how we get to our district improvement plan. And this is the lesson learned for me, rather than creating a district improvement plan and then we take it to the equity officer and the equity office and we say, hey, can you have a look at this and tell me whether this is equity or not? That's really, while that's better than nothing, that's not really a best practice. And so what we have to do is we have to engage from the beginning. So as we develop this plan, Dr. Holly and her team are working side by side with us. So we look at what our equity action plan tells us, and then we say, is our strategic plan aligning to what we heard from our community, from all of the voices in our community? So that is kind of a synopsis of where we're going with our connectivity. One last thing, I saw a question on title funds. And so there was a reallocation of title funds because we had some, actually historically, we've got a series of campuses that have actually not spent the title monies that they've received. So what we did, thank you, Ms. Vasquez, I see you nodding there. So what we're doing is we want to make sure we help them create a plan, because that's another equity lens, as you're pointing out. That's the reason title money exists, is for it to go above and beyond what the school is already getting. So we're going to work at actually providing more campuses with access to more title dollars. And we are going to reduce some schools, but not because we're doing something to them. It's that they haven't spent that money. And so we're still going to give them money, but we're going to take some of that and we're going to provide some other campuses that have never seen title money and really need it. And we're going to provide those title dollars to those schools. As a matter of fact, maybe I'm misspeaking, but I believe Akins High School is in fact one of the campuses that we're going to be able to provide some additional support monetarily through Title I. And we know that will be very well used. So thank you so much for your knowledge about that and for asking that question.
Yeah, and Dr. Elizalde, I would add to, like going back to what Ms. Stevens said at the beginning, all of our campuses saw a decrease because of student enrollment. And so with those numbers decreasing, the allocations also decreased. But like Dr. Elizalde said, we're trying to spread the love that we still have based on the student numbers that we have as far as student enrollment.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. And I didn't want to miss a clarifying question that was put in the chat previously, and I think it was directed to Ms. Stevens in relations to camp staffing levels. It says, can you clarify who is a priority school, please? Are you talking about Title I schools? And I think it's TA. If you want to clarify that question for us, you may, but Ms. Stevens?
Yes, Ms. Vasquez, could you clarify, like how did I use the word priority school?
Sorry, it took me a bit. You were referring to some schools as priority schools. Are you using the word priority to stand for Title I schools? Because that's what they used to be called in the past.
Oh, no, no, not at all. So what we did was every campus in the district, when we looked at them, we identified the exact number of students this year that were economically disadvantaged, and we used that number. So every school in terms of the staffing guidelines. Yeah.
And I think there's a follow-up to that question. It says, how will the formulas impact the parent support specialist positions?
So they didn't. So there are guidelines or formulas for staffing that we didn't touch at all this year. An example is every school has a librarian. That we didn't touch that. Those schools that had the parent support specialist, we didn't touch that at all. Those are also, you have to consider parent support specialists are also partially funded by the city. So there were many positions where we didn't touch. And just for knowledge's sake, one of the other big additions we did was at the elementary level, where we are putting in teacher assistants in our pre-K4 classrooms. And that's a new addition, and that should be very helpful for parents. So if I have a pre-K4 student and I have a first grader, I get to pick up both of my children at the same time because they will have the same school hours. And so that was, along with, I can't imagine a classroom of that many 4-year-olds, that should be very helpful all day long. That does allow us also to be a more convenience for a parent in that circumstance.
And with the special education question, we did use that with regard to how many administrators and counselors were provided on a campus. Because remember that for special ed, they already have a different number. There's so many students that generate an inclusion special ed, or if it's a resource classroom, which we'll be also looking to make some adjustments to a continuum of services where we have more least restrictive environments. We have some concerns that right now we have more areas that are more restrictive instead of being less restrictive, so that students can spend more time in our regular classrooms as much as possible. And so, but we did, so when it came to how do you determine administrators, how do you determine assistant principals and counselors, we absolutely looked at every single school and looked at not just the number of special ed students they have, we also looked at a projection based on the number of students that we're evaluating, what percentage of those are likely to be special ed, so that we could actually incorporate that. And so we may be off a little bit, but it's the first time that we have utilized the special education student enrollment so that we can help provide that supportive counseling and assistant principals that are needed to ensure we're meeting the needs of those students.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizalde, and really the leadership team for answering our questions. And we're about to close, but we just want to say we really appreciate everyone in our community for taking the time to, ask questions and share your concerns. So we do appreciate you. This meeting was recorded, and so we will be sharing that if you want to look back at some of the questions that were asked. But again, we just want to wish you a wonderful evening with your families, and we look forward to many of these conversations in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Be safe.